Hello, Booktube. The bulk of this Stevestream will consist of you telling me all sorts of things that are great about me. That's going to take up quite a lot of time because there's quite a bit, understandably. But before we get to what's great about me, I thought my opening throat clearing, since my original idea a couple of weeks ago of making my original throat clearing be about the day's news, I think would get old pretty quick. And probably you get that in a lot of other places. Uh, Most of the news is going to revolve around the U.S. presidential race in a month. World history changes pretty severely in a month. It does. That's not long. Uh, and aside from that, you've got world news, which is pretty bleak as well. All of the story stuff in the United States is not bleak at all. Uh, Record stock market highs, record inflation recovery from a recession that struck the whole world in the wake of COVID-19, record all kinds of things. The U.S. government is working largely as it should, which of course means that the fascist news media will not report on it at all. But other than just that, that would be what I would be doing my throat clearing about. That doesn't seem like it's serving anybody, and it's going to come up. Things like that will come up in the chat anyway. So I thought my throat clearing first before you all praise me would be to praise something else, not somebody else, but something else. Because recently on YouTube, there have been some videos, a couple of high-profile videos, one from Jared Henderson and one from Criminali. So that's Jared has, 80 million subscribers. Criminali has 50 million subscribers. I have no idea how many subscribers they have, but both of them make a business out of their channels. And they both recently made videos talking about how they're leaving their Kindles behind. They don't want anything more to do with their Kindles. Whether it's because they've found some other way to read electronically, or they want to reinvest in analog print and paper reading, or because they've raised understandable concerns about Amazon business practices and about the nature of e-reading just in general. A major point in Jared's video was that you don't actually own the books that you buy from Amazon. You're paying sometimes a large amount of money, sometimes as much money or more than you pay for the print book to release the thing, with all sorts of restrictions. You don't get to sell it, you don't get to lend it or give it to somebody. It's recallable by the company. They can reach into your device and recall it. They deny, but I firmly believe they also have the ability to reach into your device, just period, and brick the thing. Just reach into your individual device and make it non-functional. They deny that. They say they can't do that. I don't believe that for a minute. All legitimate concerns, but it caused Jared and Criminali to say at the same time, basically, that they were giving up this whole ecosystem, didn't want anything more to do with it. Duncan from Back Away from the Donkey, BAFTA Books, actually made a video saying, it's maybe not as bad as all that. And I wanted to take the opening throat clearing section of this Stevestream to emphasize that myself, that it's not as bad as all that. There are all sorts of controversial things that I could say on the subject. I could mention, for instance, that Amazon has done more to get more books into the hands of more people than any organization other than the Catholic Church. I could mention that the fact that you don't own your book in perpetuity and your heirs and their heirs after them is not really anything that bothers you about your print and paper books. It's every bit as true for them. Your nearest and dearest, your children or your grandchildren, they're drooling at the bit to sell or burn the books that you have lovingly accumulated your whole life. They're not going to keep them. They're all going to go in the junk. I know this for a fact. You don't shop at the Brattle sale lot as many times as I do without seeing that for a fact. There is no way for you to safeguard them. There is no way for you to guarantee that. That is going to happen. So it's not like, how many times do you give away books? Okay, I give away books a lot, but I don't do a lot of giving away of ebooks. I do that mostly print and paper books. But not to stress this too much, because in some localities it is technically illegal, but there are all sorts of ways to remove the digital rights management from an ebook file. And there are also millions and millions of ebooks out there in the world, not just common domain stuff like on Project Gutenberg, but lots of other places too, where the books are free, where they don't have any DRM. And they go on your device instead of piling up in your house. And there's an ear-piercing siren. It's 5 blocks away. We'll see if they're headed to a Dunkin' Donuts up at that end of town, or if they want the Dunkin' Donuts at this end of town. Sounds like they're headed for my Dunkin' Donuts. Yeah, they're headed for my Dunkin' Donuts. So the only thing that'll stop them now, since they're running the siren and blasting through intersections at 80 miles an hour because they're better than you, because the laws don't apply to them, the only thing that would stop them now would be if they strike a pedestrian and kill them, which may result in penalties even as severe as losing overtime for that day. Just think, next time I shoot someone, I could get arrested for it. Anyway, what was my point? Oh, right. There is a vast, thriving book ecosystem out there. There are plenty of new releases that do not require DRM. The author says, I don't want any DRM on this. There are plenty of slightly less than new releases. Not all of you are obsessed with new releases the way I am, that are free. And there are ways to get around DRM. It's largely an unprosecuted crime, a minor thing. There's no harm being done by it, usually. And libraries lend ebooks. Some have very good programs, and many are connected to even better programs. So most of the objections that were raised, I think, in the 2 videos that I'm talking about, they've been raised many, many times before. I don't think they outweigh the sheer glory of a thing like this. This is just a little lightweight device, USB-C charging of plastic. It's as simple a device as it could be, and this has 7,780 books on it. Right there, just right there in my hand. None of this wrangling for shelf space, none of this wondering, oh, where did I find this thing? What did I think of this thing? What was my note on this once upon a time? Let's say, for instance, that you were writing a brief post about Mark Smeaton, the musician, the beautiful young musician who confessed to Thomas Cromwell that he slept with Anne Boleyn while she was Queen of England, and thereby started the whole ball rolling on the arrest of a whole bunch of other people and also the arrest of Anne Boleyn. Let's say that you were sitting there writing that thing and you wanted not only to recall, you could already recall what Eric Ives, Anne Boleyn's great biographer, said about Mark Smeaton in his book. Let's say you could recall that. Maybe you're some sort of freak, but you wanted to quote it. Okay, well, you can get up. You've got a miniature schnauzer sleeping in a curled ball on your stomach. She's going to be very upset if you move her. If you move her, though, and you put up with her upset, you then have to get up. Maybe your knees creak. You have to find the book, and then you have to find the section, and then from the section, you have to find the appropriate bookmark. Not bookmark, endnote. So you've got a finger here. Oh, okay, this is where he mentions it. He's saying that. Oh, I dropped it. Wait, he's saying that it's note number 8 of chapter number. What was the name of the chapter? Oh, they're not named. They're not numbered. They're named. Okay, what's the name of this thing? But when I was paging back to get the name of the chapter, I lost the number of the page. Okay, I've got both. Now I go back to the end notes, the back of the book, and find that. And now I've got to take that with my finger in the place, bring it back to where I'm typing, flatten it out somehow, and do that, as opposed to finding the section on this thing and cut and pasting it, which takes 2 seconds. Takes 2 seconds. This is the new Kindle Paperwhite. Just a flat screen, pretty much the platonic ideal of an e-reader. It's as light as a feather. It's as quick as a whisk. A nice, sharp reading experience, really durable. You've also got the Kindle Basic, which is a slightly smaller form factor, and as you can see, the screen is recessed just a bit. This one's in pretty blue, also very sharp, also very clear reading. Also USB-C. You also got the option to have a case. This is a sleep-wake case for the black Kindle Basic, which again has the slightly raised bezels there. That's what happens with this device. You just copy and paste, and then you move on to something else. You look for something else. You look for your own annotations. It's easy to do. They're all bunched together. You don't have to flip through a book and wonder if it's the right book. You get all of those advantages, and I'm talking about the Kindle here. You get them with other e-readers as well. I'm not as big a fan. I have tried the Barnes & Noble Nook. I've tried the Kobo, the various Kobo e-readers. I just think that the Kindle is better. It's usually the newest Kindle model is usually just a better reading experience for me anyway. These are miracles, absolute miracles. And it seems to me, it struck me that the quibbles in those videos that I watched were just that, fairly minor stuff. As little and equivalent inconvenience as getting up and thumbing through a book and then finding room for it and finding shelf space for it and keeping it clean, or going out to get it at a used bookstore, maybe in tedious company, maybe with a tedious shop owner who wants to talk your ear off. These represent a significant improvement in every aspect of that, every single one. It's true that on paper anyway, they don't represent an improvement in a print and paper book's ability to be resold or given to somebody. Okay. But that's fairly minor. But anyway, that was the defense that I wanted to make. I wanted to make a defense of this miracle machine. And now that I have, we will go to the chat where you will praise me because of how pretty I am. So let's see what's on your mind. Once again, L Tell is first. Hey, Steve, I'm about to embark on the Wolf Hall trilogy. What is your favorite period of British history and why? Do you remember any books to read beforehand to provide some historical context? I don't. What is your favorite period of British history and why? Please annotate. Show your work. You should definitely, in the Wolf Hall trilogy, you should definitely read the Wikipedia entries on Thomas Cromwell, maybe King Henry VIII himself, maybe Anne Boleyn. And also there are a number of videos on my channel. I've done a couple of read-alongs of Wolf Hall, a couple of discussions of it. There are probably 10 videos on Wolf Hall that I think will help you a lot. But you don't require much. Hilary Mantel doesn't require much. Your question reminds me that I really need to return to our read-along of Bring Up the Bodies, because I'm going to go from Bring Up the Bodies backwards to Wolf Hall. And I can't do that until I'm done with Bring Up the Bodies. Zulu Blades, hey Steve, reading Stanley Hyman Standards, thanks to you. Oh, good, wonderful, and prompted me to track down Jane Harrison's Themis. It looks like rough but interesting sledding. Is this accurate? I found it impenetrable, no pun intended. As Sleepy Channel, I may not be awake. You go live, so I say hi from Sweden now. Also, have you heard of any alternatives to NaNoWriMo? Oh my God, alternatives to NaNoWriMo are popping up everywhere. It's balkanizing. There is no alternative to NaNoWriMo at the scale of NaNoWriMo. Instead, a whole bunch of people are doing what I predicted they would do. Through NaNoWriMo, over the years, over a decade, you have met people that you like writing with. Okay, well, we don't want to do NaNoWriMo anymore, so let's just keep writing together. That has happened all over the place. That is, you go on the writing subreddits or on other social media, you will find that everywhere. The little groups like that are popping up everywhere. And I want to make one myself. I don't know that it's going to be possible in 2024. It may have to be something that I launch in 2025, but I want to make one myself. Let's see here. Mark says 2 therapy sessions back to back. Venerable Steve, your benevolence knows neither torpor nor remissness, and we, your loyal wayward subjects, are forever indebted to it. Okay, maybe switch to decaf. Aslan says, hello, Steve. How are you doing today? I am doing fine. I'm doing fine. I'm a lonely, frail old shut-in. I read and write all day long, and I intersperse that with going outside with my little baby Bean. There is my little baby Bean, all curled up tight in a little ball on her chair. And that is usually wonderful. It is always wonderful. But she did something today that was downright strange. I've never seen her do it before. she was walking. We were walking along on the grass on a fairly nice sculpted park type area near a subway station, trees, grass, everything. And she stopped to smell a old pile of poop. Admittedly interesting. It had interesting food smells still on it, and she can detect a lot more of that than I can. Uh, and then when she was done, she walked on and stepped in it and really squashed in it. Her front left paw was encased in somebody else's poop. And not only did she do that, this is an incredibly finicky dog who never even comes close to anything that might get on her. Not only did she do that, but she didn't seem to notice or care. She just walked around with it that way. I had to clean it off with the garden hose. That was weird. But otherwise, the day's been fine. Full of activity, full of writing and reading. Very satisfying. Sid says, nice review of the Seamus Heaney letter collection. Why, thank you. You won't read a review like it, I believe, anywhere else. You will read reviews. There have been a couple of major ones. I think there's another one coming this weekend. But there's a tone to mine. I'm not saying that I'm a better reviewer than the people who will review it, but when I'm reviewing a book like that for Open Letters Review, I have absolutely no finger in the soup bowl but my own. I can choose the tone. I can choose the emphasis. I can choose it all. And that gives you freedom. That really does. I really enjoyed how it came out. Is there a recommended place to begin with his poetry, or should I grab any collection of selected poems? Well, he had a hit with 2 early slim collections of poetry, and they will be contained almost entirely in any big selection. So, maybe no, it isn't necessary. His style doesn't noticeably change, but I maybe start with Death of a Naturalist, something like that, and move on from there. Creepy Pasta Goblin says, if he's not here in 5 minutes, I'm staging a dirty protest. Oh, I'm here now. Monedo says, good evening. Bookends and Books is here. Good evening. Thanks for yesterday's advice. I started Le Dom Puzzleable, you Frenchy people. 60 pages read, 1,360 to go. I should be done by Halloween or maybe Christmas. Good help us. But what edition are you reading of Sholokov? What edition are you reading? Who does the translation? When is the translation? A page count is interesting, but I want to know what version you're reading this thing. And good luck finding somebody on BookTube to talk about it with. I'd be happy to do that, but good luck. Almost nobody has read this book, which is a terrible shame. It is a book that is really hamstrung by a dodgy initial translation run into English, which is the only language that matters. If it hadn't had such a butchered, dodgy entrance, I keep waiting for like Peviar and Volkonsky to do a big banner thing, and or somebody to do a big new translation, gets everybody talking, gets everybody reading the book. Anyway, Jenny Parks, sorry, but you'll have to pry my Kindle from my cold dead hands. Even then, bury or cremate me with it. I feel exactly the same way. I love reading on my iPads, but when it comes to just burying yourself in a book, even the temptation to do anything else, I think the positives so overwhelmingly outweigh the negatives that were mentioned in those videos as to not be worth mentioning. The negatives not be worth mentioning. Aslan says, I've been reading Cody of Last Chances by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I think I like it so far. What's your thoughts on the author? Should I continue to explore his works or move on? I kind of like him. I think he's overpraised, but that's because he's one of the only really competent people doing what he's doing. Kevin J.N. I love my Kindle, but I have been leaning towards print books on purchase. The price point isn't as attractive now. I only really miss e-reading when the sun goes down. Bad lamps in my house. Yeah. It's another superiority of e-reading is that it comes with its own light, its own tones of light, its own levels of light. Sid says, I exclusively e-read now, but I can see a future where I can get an affordable e-reader that isn't a Kindle where I live, and then I dump Amazon in a heartbeat. They've been uninspiring lately. What does that mean, uninspiring? What does that mean? Is that a reference? Their antics as a company are deplorable. I'm the first person to admit that. I'm just talking about their service, not whether or not they're ethical. But every other e-reader that I have ever tried has not been as good. Aslan, what I don't like about Kindle is the contained ecosystem. I prefer something more open, and that allows me to do more by myself. Well, but the contained ecosystem it's extremely variable. I mean, Kindles accept EPUBs. Not just Kindle EPUBs, they accept EPUBs. Your Kindle has a dedicated email address. So if you have an EPUB book, you can send it to your Kindle and read it on there. That's not constricted. That's not a contained ecosystem. That didn't even come from the Kindle ecosystem. And the Kindle ecosystem is manageable. I mean, I know we all joke wryly, morbidly about how Kindle makes it so you have to pay not to see ads. And there are jokes about how a large part of your home screen is dedicated to selling you things, as opposed to showing you your own content. But those things you can circumnavigate those. You can set up the presentation of your Kindle so that those are not as big an issue. Jack O'Hara, what problems do you specialize in solving, Steve? Heartbreak by any chance? I specialize in all of them. My specialty is omniscience. I specialize in all of them. I am here to help. Peyton is here. Will aliens descend on the planet if we are 1.2 seconds away from blowing up the entire planet? Do you believe in the possibility of aliens? Aliens will not descend on the planet. We would see them coming for a long, long time. So they're not going to descend anywhere out of the blue. And I guess I believe in aliens. It doesn't. Usually when someone asks, do you believe in aliens? What they mean is, do you believe in aliens we're going to meet someday? I don't believe in those. I think that complex, sentient technology using life, all of that, complex, sentient technology using life is staggeringly rare in the universe. Now, people who say that it's not, or who want to believe that it's not, will point to the odds. Look at how many stars there are. Look at how many galaxies. Look at how many galaxies there are and how many stars are in each one of them. You mean to tell me that this is so rare that we might be the only example? I've had a number of people over the years tell me that my belief that extraterrestrial life is unbelievably rare amounts to theism. It amounts to geocentric theism. But I don't think so. I think it's a series of miracles that we are here at all. So aliens might exist. I think if by aliens you mean alien life, which you don't, you mean the Vulcans. But if you mean just alien life, in other words, biological life that did not originate on Earth, I think that might exist in the solar system right now. But it would be scum or singular cellular. It wouldn't be animals or people. I very much doubt there are animals anywhere else but on this planet. Jay says, I always have a print copy in addition to the Kindle version. I much prefer, though, to read from the Kindle. Levi says, hi, Steve. Which translation of the Iliad and Odyssey would you suggest for a first read? I always suggest the Fagles for the 1-2 punch. The Fagles translation is very accessible, and the Fagles translations come with those Bernard Knox introductions, which are incredible. It's just incredible. Set aside an afternoon to read the introduction very carefully, very lovingly first before you read the book. You'll get a lot out of it. Jed Donahoe, I would love to hear more of your Rings of Power rants. My own rants involve lots of head slapping and 4-letter swear words. I know. What I don't want is for how bad this thing is to be gently steamrolled in, well, it's part of our lives now. So let's start assessing the top 10 moments from Rings of Power. I don't want to see that. I know that it will happen, but I don't want to see it. This is an abomination, not just because of the desecration that it does to Tolkien, but because it is really, really, really bad cinema. It really is bad. You don't need to know anything about Tolkien to watch even one scene, any scene, anywhere picked at random in Rings of Power and say, what the hell is going on here? I thought this person was over there. Anyway, Jared Henderson. For the record, I'm still using an e-reader. I'm just using a Books e-reader and backing up all my files locally, as I don't want Amazon to have that kind of access or control. Right. The Books manufacturer, I think, can still brick your device remotely, just like Amazon can brick a Kindle remotely. Amazon swears that they can't do that, and that even if they could, they wouldn't do it. I don't believe either of those things are true. And Books is the same way. Their devices are under their control, even once you've bought it, I think. But right, backing up your files locally and using another e-reader, okay, but you can do that with a Kindle. I do that with my Kindle, and the Kindles are so cool. Joe Spivey, good Lord, it's way past your bedtime. Hi, Steve. The local magazine I've been hounding over the last few weeks has finally got back in touch. Looks like my scribbling will earn me some money at last. Thanks for your continued encouragement. Good Lord. Congratulations. You must email me all the details. Good Lord. That's wonderful. It was bound to happen. Didn't I say? Didn't I say? I didn't just encourage. I predicted. Tolstoy 111. Every time you bring up Rings of Power, I get a frisson that I need to read Lord of the Rings. You're not telling me you haven't read Lord of the Rings. You mean reread. I'd always put it off because there was too much serious lit I hadn't read. Hope that didn't sound snobbish. OMG on a cracker. Are you saying you haven't read Lord of the Rings? Oh, yeah. You should read Lord of the Rings. Definitely. Nietzschean Wig. Hi, Steve. Interested in potentially reading Cardinal Newman's Apologia Pro Vita Sua for Victober. We share psychological contempt for the demotic and demagogic nature of Protestantism. Do you really? Do you really? Good. Great. Aslan says, you talked on time about how searching on forums for answers when reading a book, one time, I'm sure you mean, searching on forums for answers when reading a book instead of being patient is a kind of cheating. What about using the search option on Kindle to remember characters? No, because answers when reading a book means you haven't read the book yet yourself. You're asking for someone else to cheat, to help you cheat. You're looking over someone's shoulder. Remembering things once you have read the book is just a muscle. There's no cheating about getting a device to remind you of a name. No one's testing you on that. Oh no, the chat jumped. Is that our first time tonight? Let's see. We were talking about cheating. Oh my God, there are a lot of people here. Okay. I don't know how many people there are. I obviously can't tell how many people there are here. Let's see here. Okay, here we go. Waco 1340. Is there nothing your community as a whole can do to bring the siren noise to someone's notice? No. There isn't. Azam. Hello, Steve. Why do you love Augustine despite being an atheist? And what about the Bible made you say it was a book that gave you the most warmth? Well, I don't have to. I don't understand the basis of the. Actually, I do understand the basis of the question. The basis of the question is that Christianity is real, that it's true, and that otherwise, why on earth would you ask the question? You're basically asking me, why do I love Lord of the Rings, even though I don't believe that Middle Earth is real? Of course I love it. I love it for its merits on its own. I love Augustine for his merits as a writer on his own. I love the jumping around and the bright shining brain of his. I don't have to believe what he writes to like those things. I don't have to believe what the Bible says to have it warm me as a work of literature. Wine and calzones. Those two gentlemen, I'm sure, have deals with companies that market alternatives to Amazon Kindle. Take their opinions with a large grain of salt. Well, that's inhospitable, don't you think? That if they had some deal like that, surely they would admit it. And even if they didn't admit it, surely the only form that deal would take would be to them to praise the thing the alternative rather than to condemn Amazon. What would be the point? That's an inhospitable read of the situation. Nietzschean Wig says, I have ordered the Cat's translation of TBK. Can't wait for my 5th reading of it in 2 years. And of course, you are blurbed on it. Yes, there's only one TBK edition to have. Only one. Kevin JN, I miss being able to read the New York Times on my Kindle. Dropping newspaper and periodicals was horrible. It was so nice not to getting a wet paper on a Sunday morning or the paper arriving late. Yeah, well, again, I am not meaning to fanboy for Amazon as a company. They are an evil money grubbing company. But the ecosystem, to use a word that was used earlier, that they have built, the literary ecosystem they have built is incredible. And there are all kinds of ways to make it work. And I don't think those ways are any more inconvenient than the inconveniences that attend actually having print and paper books and going and getting them. Let's see here. Nietzsche and Wig. Also, I don't know if I have asked this already. Have you watched the 1974 BBC series Fall of Eagles? Absolutely fantastic. I have watched it, but not since the 70s. Shelley Swearingen is here saying hello. Wonderful. I've got some really great booktubers here. A little round of golf claps for Joe Spivey. All of you watch his channel, and he announced in this live stream that he is now a paid critic, which was due to happen. I have been rattling cages. I have been telling people. I knew that it would happen. I am always right on this subject. I'm not, despite what I say, I'm not always right on a lot of subjects. But when it comes to whether or not somebody should be a paid critic in print magazines, I am never wrong. Literally never wrong. I said that to him from the beginning. I believed it before he did. Chris Bianchi says libraries are struggling with ebooks. It costs them 3 to 4 times as much compared to buying new physical books. Unfortunately, it's all licensing agreements. Oh, are the licensing agreements why it's more expensive? Maybe. It must be. Aslan, the danger with not owning your book is that you can eventually lose your notes. This happened to me when I unregistered my Kindle to solve a bug. It was quite a loss. Yes, you have to periodically save your notes, send them outside the device, send them to yourself somehow, or copy them over somehow. That is not hard to do. Or if the sending to yourself seems too complicated, or maybe doesn't work on the Kindle model that you have, well, you could start a reading notebook, which takes care of that problem. Let's see here. Jordan Parsons is here. Good Lord. So great booktubers, not only present, but past as well. Jordan doesn't make videos anymore. Steve, I'm looking for advice on how to stay hip. I naturally thought of you since you're younger, more handsome, and have more hair and muscles than me. Yeah, you've got to know the latest dance crazes on TikTok, basically. And you've got to follow them week by week, because there's a new craze just about 3 or 4 times a month. So you can't fall behind. One of the most viral fads right now is somebody took one of the dumb, dorky songs from the musical Chicago and made a dance routine out of it. And it is sweeping TikTok. Sweeping TikTok. You've got to know those to start with. Another thing that would help your hip quotient would be to show up here for wine and calzones. Although, now that I think about it, I should clarify that some guests, even if they come for wine and calzones, are never going to be hip. I should preemptively point that out. Auntie Gaia says, Steve, I'm reading Man in Full parallel with Confidence Man by Maggie Haberman. Seemed an appropriate fiction nonfiction combination. I don't know why you'd ruin Wolf with Haberman. Why do that? Confidence Man by Maggie Haberman is going to infuriate you on a couple of different levels. Whereas A Man in Full should only please you, a masterfully done old style novel. I don't know why you'd yoke them together. I mean, if it works for you, fine. But Fee, hi Steve, how are you? I am absolutely fine. I'm joining a local book club / reading group for the first time. Are there any ground rules I should be aware of? I won't know anyone, so I'll be nervous and shy. People, I swear, I adore you. Well, you're asking advice from someone who has never felt nervous or shy. I literally don't know what those things feel like. It's not that I felt less of it than you. I've never felt those things. So I have no idea what those emotional states feel like. But I envy you with a local book club. I would like to have one here. I wish that I did. I don't know how practical it would be. It would have to meet here. I'm not going to leave Frida and go somewhere else to talk about, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks for the 80 millionth time. But I still wish I did. And the ground rules they aren't specific to book clubs. They are what we touched on last night, and we can touch on again tonight. The ground rules for any kind of group conversation, communal thing are: listen more than you talk, be sincere, ask follow-up questions that you genuinely mean, don't show off. Basic precepts like that. Those are for any conversation, not just for a book club. Eric Adler, hi Steve, you're very almost impossibly pretty. Glaucoma been troubling you long, has it? Also, do you like Gene Wolfe? Do you mean the man or the books? I just finished Book of the New Sun and loved it. Yes, he's great. Actually, in this case, the man and the books are both great. Azam says, hello, Steve. Only one more jelly donut. Better hurry up. As soon as you get through the red light, you're going to turn off the siren. Yeah. That's all you cared about, is getting through the red light without hitting somebody. Although if you hit somebody, you're just going to lose. You're just going to do desk duty for that day. It's not like you're going to lose your job or go to jail. So anyway, Azam. Now that we're done with the requisite interruption by the traffic. Hello, Steve. Why do you say the Bible gave you the most comfort despite being an atheist? Somebody asked this exact question like 10 minutes ago. What are the odds? Was it you? I hope it wasn't you. Don't spam the chat with questions. I've already answered the question, and I'm not ignoring any questions, so you don't need to worry that I'm skipping it. But the reason that it gives me comfort, despite me being an atheist, is because I don't need it to be true to enjoy its value. Nietzsche and Wig says, I have been reading The Will to Power, the Quran, and Coleridge at the same time. The Nietzsche is the most enjoyable reading. I also spent this evening singing Schubert to myself. Okay. Okay, great. Must be fun at parties. Aslan says, any advice for people who want to become more articulate? I suppose the natural response is to write, but I have no idea how to start. Well, the natural response would be to write, if by articulate you mean fluent in writing. Articulate in speaking, writing won't help you much. You can only practice the thing by doing that thing. So if you mean more articulate in speaking, well, then that means more speaking. But writing, sure. If you mean getting more practiced at writing, the only thing that will do it is to do more writing, lots of it, and in practical ways that will improve your ability to exercise your brain, to exercise and increase your vocabulary, to exercise and increase your ability to control what it is that you want to say. One of the best exercises along those lines is one of the most humble ones and commonplace ones, which is to keep a daily journal. Only don't keep a daily journal where you slowly open a leather-bound volume and pick up a fountain pen as though you were Galadriel. Instead, open a book to a single page, write the date of the day on the top, and tell yourself, I'm going to effectively encapsulate the high points, low points, and interesting stuff about today on just this page in 20 minutes. You do that for 200 days, you will suddenly have command of your writing language that nothing else will give you. Anyway, Azam is responding to somebody else. View from the bar is here. Steve, I just today realized I've been driving in a car with mold in it. Taking action now. First thing that came to mind. I'm sure Steve has some horror stories with mold. Do you? I do. I do have horror stories with mold. Yes. Because you can't. The worst thing to do with mold is ignore it. You see it and you think, it's just over there. I don't really care about it. But that's the worst thing to do. It's putting spores into the air all the time. That's what mold does. When I lived in the Caribbean, I had at one point a real problem with mold. In the tiny little apartment where I lived, I decided that the solution to that would be to live more or less outside. Let's see here. Aslan, any living French authors you like or can recommend? No. Bottle Imp Books. Watch your video on book/screen adaptations and respectfully disagree. Glance at my shelves. Why aren't you using subjects in your sentences? Are you telegraphing to the Titanic? Glanced at my shelves, and books are often better. The Poor Things, Brighton Rock, The Trial, Big Fish, Gods and Generals, Wolf Hall. Okay, the list right there. I don't have any objections to the list right there. That you've listed books that are marginally better. Gods and Generals, I think, would be a toss-up, but you've listed books that are either marginally or clearly better. But there is a much, much longer list that where the opposite is true. We'll just have to agree to disagree. That's all. Auntie Gaia says, Steve, what is your go-to choice at Dunkin' Donuts? Hash browns. They're hash browns. They're overpriced, at least here in Boston, but their hash browns are my go-to choice. Unfortunately, one of the social stigma, one of the little social embarrassments that Steve has to live with, is I've mentioned the 3 rules of being old. I am always hungry, I'm always cold, and the music is always too loud. Now, just recently in this year, knock on wood, very, very grateful, the always cold thing has gone away. But the always hungry thing, I was raised and socialized by people who A, sniff each other's privates as a way of saying hello, and B, cannot be sated when it comes to food. Simply cannot be sated when it comes to food. Will eat themselves unconscious, which is one of my favorite things to do. So when I go to, I mean, what do you get? 2 hash browns in an order at Dunkin' Donuts? You go up to Dunkin' Donuts counter and say, I'd like an order of hash browns. And 5 minutes later, you get a little envelope with three nuggets in it. So I have to go up to the counter and say, I would like 8 hash browns. I'd like 8 orders of hash browns, please. And they're just like, what? 8? Did you say 8? I have to go through that over and over and over again. Nietzsche and Wig, thoughts on the death of Maggie Smith? I loved her in Downton Abbey. It was a great loss. It was a lot of pleasure going through her back catalog, just thinking about it all. I loved her in Downton Abbey too, but I've loved her in a lot of things before then. So I went to see The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie. I don't know how many times. Peyton says, the way you communicate with dogs is fascinating. Can you describe the process? No, I can't. I've tried many, many, many times. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. I understand on one level why it doesn't. The reason why Homo sapiens sapiens controls this planet is because of spoken language. That's why humans control this world and have the fates of every other species, except for viruses, in their hands, is because of spoken language. So it is almost incomprehensible to most humans to imagine a language that isn't spoken. That's why it's taken all this time for ethologists to finally get around to examining animals communicating, because they're not speaking English. So for 250 years of organized science, it was assumed they didn't communicate at all. Beasts abstract not. But no, I can't describe the process. It involves a whole bunch of things, some of which you might be able to see. You're an intensely visual species, but most of which you couldn't perceive anyway. Your sense of smell is almost non-existent. For instance, last night you said you could tell a dog to bite their owner's calf off if you wanted to, and they would obey. My babies. It's different with me. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to believe it. I think in all of the extended booktube world, I think there are just 2 people who have actually seen it demonstrated. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to. I'm not stressing it at all. It was part of an anecdote last night, or I wouldn't have brought it up at all. But it's a language that I understand. Anyway, Jenny Park says, I preferred her in the Sister Act movies. Well, that's because you're basic. You've all got problems. Jeffrey Clark, my Kindle catalog is over 5,000 books purchased since 2010. Only about 10 have I lost access to because the publisher pulled the rights. Well, and you don't need to lose access even to those if you export them from your Kindle. Like, for instance, Calibre, the app Calibre doesn't work for me for some reason. I'm going to try to get that rectified next week. but it doesn't work for me. Every attempt I've made has failed, but it does work for millions of people. And you can use Calibre to take the books off your Kindle and store them in Calibre. Or even further, you could take them from Calibre and store them on a thumb drive. And then it won't matter what the publisher does. It won't matter what Amazon does. You'll have the file. You'll be able to send the file to any device you want, anytime you want. Jeffrey Clark, Amazon knows if publishers keep pulling rights, it would hurt them. So they do not do this lightly. If you break the rules, sure, then they can pull your viewing rights, but that's on you. Right. Amazon does not want to make you distrust the Kindle as a device. They don't want to make you distrust this device. They have a team of people. There aren't many. I think there's 7 of them, whose job is to notice very carefully videos like those by Jared Henderson and Criminali. They don't write that off. Jenny Parks, I no longer discuss the number of books on my Kindle or the number of open series. Got a problem, do we? Sid says, I called Kindle uninspiring because I see some nice reading features in their competitors, which Amazon can enable with a simple update, and yet new updates are only bringing new bugs in my experience. Oh, okay. All right, that's interesting. I agree completely. You look at other e-reading ecosystems, some of them definitely have features that you wish the Kindle had. I don't know that I agree that it's always new bugs. I think a lot of Kindle updates are really good. But I agree, yeah, that you can look at the other side of the fence and see stuff that you want. But I think on the whole, the Kindle is a great product. Ronock Noham. Hey Steve, is that an anagram of some kind? I don't want to know. Hey Steve, do you have a favorite Jeeves novel from Woodhouse? I know who wrote the Jeeves novels. Thanks. For me, it would be Code of the Woosters. A fairly familiar answer, but there you have it. Auntie Gaia says, since George Washington is more recent reading of history is generally considered to be a rather bad general. Where do you see this? More recent reading of history. Where do you hear that from anybody but me? Are there any other founding fathers who would have been better men to lead the army? Oh, sure. Yeah. There were a bunch of people always say that Washington was the only one who could possibly have done this. No, there are plenty of others that could have done this. Just look for the high-ranking generals that he disagreed with. Of course, it would have been disastrous if that kind of trust had been extended to Benedict Arnold, but maybe not. Maybe if that kind of trust had been extended to Benedict Arnold wouldn't become Benedict Arnold, but there was also General Lee and a whole bunch of others. There were a whole bunch of others. There were people who could have done Washington's job, definitely. And wouldn't have needed to rely on the staggering amount of luck that Washington had. Otherwise, we would be saying that anyone could have done his job. Nietzsche and Wig, why is your Boston accent relatively mild? My Boston accent is virtually undetectable, not relatively mild. But it need not be. It need not be. It's entirely possible that I acquired a Boston accent from an area of Boston where the accent is pretty darn strong. M Street represent. It's relatively mild because I control myself. That's why. Chris Bianchi's back. You've noted the decline in global reading habits. Yes. Did you see Katie Books? Did you all see Katie Books' video on the reading rates of illiteracy in Wales? Is this mainly driven by shorter attention spans, or is it the result of people gravitating towards other forms of media and entertainment? It's shorter attention spans and the breakdown of attention span capable consciousness by social media. That's definitely part of it. But it's also the long-term harvest that you reap if you are sending indifferent or poor students into education. So that your primary school educators, they might have all the passion in the world, but they're not all that better at reading than their students are, and aren't instilling that love. Also, lots of other things as well. We have parents are working now more than ever, which means not to get all right on you, but it means there's not a parent in the home raising the children and teaching them to read. Children will be taught to read in school, but they will be taught to love to read at home only, or at the library. And who's bringing them to the library? There are a whole bunch of factors, but the results, oh my God, the latest statistics, and I'm not picking on Wales because the statistics in America are just as bad. and we're a little bigger than whales. Michael H says, what would you do if you were awarded an A? Oh, no, the chat jumped. What was I going to be rewarded? I was going to be rewarded something. I never get rewarded anything. Uh, uh, let's see here. What would you do if you were awarded something? I'm sorry. Oh my God, there are a lot of people in this chat. How many people are in the chat? What would you? Oh, here we go. Michael H. What would you do if you were awarded an $800K MacArthur Genius Grant? Well, I'd have a lot of work done on my teeth, for one. It's cash and carry here in the United States for most dental care. I would have a lot of work done on my teeth. That would be very unpleasant. Probably more trouble than it's worth, but I would probably do that. Just out of consciousness for the next 10 years, and what they'll be otherwise. But probably the main thing that I would do would be to invest in real estate. I know a lot of people who know the subject really well. I would get their opinion of where and how I should invest in real estate. I don't have much in the way of wants. Oh, that sounds very, I don't know. I don't know. I actually know how that sounds. I know it sounds strange in the 21st century, but I don't know how any other way that it sounds. But I don't have much in the way of wants. I need to sink a large amount of money into my teeth, more than I'm willing to do. An $800K grant would make that very easy. I would only need a tiny fraction of that to fix incipient problems or problems down the line. But otherwise, I mean, what would the answer be? I think a lot of people would say very superficial answers. I have very few wants. Most of my wants, 99.9% of them are taken care of. Probably real estate. That would, I think, not only be practical but fun as just an experience. Jenny Parks, I saw that there's a Watch Mojo video about the top 10 moments that weren't in the books, and I just stared and went, huh, none of it was. Oh, you mean for Lord of the Rings? Yeah, you're starting to see the Watch Mojo shill media sites like that just live for access and hyperventilating about how everything is great. They're going to be the ones that do this kind of cultural acceptance of this garbage. But there literally isn't anything. So yeah, none of the stuff in the appendices that the showrunners have access to is reflected in the show at all. Mark says, I read your Planta Sapiens review and chuckled at the end when you said, so who will write Plant Liberation? Then I read Planta Sapiens and thought, well, who is going to write Plant Liberation? Well, I put effort into my reviews. I don't ask cheap disposable questions usually. Mark says, I can't stop thinking about it. Well, yeah, I can't either. I have not been able to get that book out of my mind. Testing says, hi, Steve. Hope you are very well in these trying times. Wait, it's not trying times. It's not COVID anymore, which is where that whole meaningless phrase started. Meaningless in the sense that you say it to someone when you absolutely don't care whether or not they're doing well. You're not even paying attention to what your mouth is saying. You don't even know what your mouth is saying. Hope you're doing well. You're fired. Anyway, I am about to start a booktube channel in the next few weeks. Oh, why? How exciting. But I am quite worried about people in my area and work finding out. How do you overcome this concern? Okay, first of all, I'm wondering why you would be worried about that. A channel about books? How is that going to be bad for anything? How is anybody going to be upset about that? How do you overcome this concern is obviously I can't draw from my own personal experience. I named my channel my own name. I have been giving people my email address for 8 years. I don't have any of that concern at all. I was writing for the public 50 years before I made a booktube channel, so I don't have any of those concerns at all. I think for you it would be a question of whether or not those concerns outweigh the pleasure of having a channel. I mean, I don't know what you could possibly do on a booktube channel that would bother the people in your area or your work. But if you think it is, the only answer I can come up with is politics. Then you have to assess the risks. That's all. Maybe, obviously, in a case like this, you would not put your name in the title of your channel. Maybe a few other things like that. But if you've got a lot of anxiety on the subject, I wouldn't do it because this is supposed to be fun. Trip says, did you see the recent Atlantic article about reading? Apparently kids are using ChatGPT a ton and can't even read a paragraph anymore. Is reading declining in the smartphone age? I think reading is declining in the smartphone age. Yeah. I know two different schools of thought on the subject. One says reading is not declining. There's always only been a very small rump of people who actually latch on to reading and love it and are good at it. And that tiny group, that tiny selection of society has always been small. And then there's the other side, the other group of people saying, no, not at all. In the 1940s, 10-year-olds could read a lot better than 10-year-olds can read today. Sean says, hi, Steve. You've mentioned before in passing that you don't like David Pakman. Why is that? A whole bunch of reasons. My dislike of him initially spiked when he was part of the crowd saying that there's no chance that Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee. There's no chance that Hillary Clinton can lose the election. He and channels like him repeating that over and over and over again convinced a lot of people to stay home and not vote. But I wouldn't say that it's dislike of him after that. I mean, he got the mother of all wake-up calls as everybody else did at the time. I wish that I could have all the people back in this room for wine and calzones who looked at me like I was crazy when I looked at them and said, not only is Trump going to win, there's no way he can lose. If you do the things that his campaign keeps doing literally every day that would have ended any other campaign in American history, and it just makes his campaign stronger, that means he's going to win. If he can't lose, that means he's going to win. But that was a long time ago. That's not the reason. There's just something about his affect, something about the baked in low key contempt that he has for his viewers. Maybe I should resubscribe to his channel and see if things have changed. Let's see here. Anti-Gaia says, Steve, what do you think of how crazy that Tina Peters person was? The judge really read her the riot act. Yeah, well, she wasn't crazy. She was stone cold sane about what she was doing. She just wanted to overthrow the government. That's all. And that scene from the courtroom was arresting. It's a Friday night. And it's a big road with no real main. Okay, never mind. I thought the footage of the sentencing from the trial was fascinating to watch. I don't often watch that sort of thing. It bothered me how grandstanding the judge was. He said, I am perfectly content in my own mind that all of my decisions are in line with the law. But he only said that in the midst of his peroration once he'd gone far enough so that even he knew, his instincts were telling him, that this summing up itself is grounds for reversal. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if that happens. Of course, there's a huge likelihood that that in January or February, not only is Tina Peters not in jail, but she herself is presiding over his public execution or his public flogging if she's feeling merciful. Testing says, follow-up question, Steve, any general advice / tips for new booktubers? I do. I do have some advice, yes. I've said it many times before on my channel, but if you're thinking, I'm worried about this anxiety, please feel free to email me so we can hash this over. It's not really a chat type thing. Anxiety over how your neighbors and work are going to react to your channel sounds serious. But general advice, concentrate. I know I'm no one to talk, but concentrate on what you're doing. Concentrate on a background. Don't have an ominous open door. Don't have a ceiling fan sprouting out of your head. Don't have an odd person just standing there in the background, unfocused and not moving. Don't have anything that is going to distract the viewer from what you're doing. Obviously, I know I'm not one to talk because usually that pillow has an adorable dog on it. but you all manage. I'm talking about something ominous, something unprofessional, bunch of garbage, bunch of empty cans falling over, something like that. That'd be one thing. Second thing would be, don't chase after fads. Look at all the new booktube channels that have come up just in 2024 that have done well. They have communities, they have presences, they are talked about, they are referenced and tagged and mentioned, not just by me, but by lots of other people. by being themselves. Just do what you want, and the booktube community will embrace you for doing that. Which is, I mean, that is absolutely, that is one of the most wonderful things about this community, is that you don't need to hew to any party line. The old booktube, where you had to read the same 8 YA books as everybody else, or no one would pay attention to you, are over. Those days are over. You get people talking about supernatural nonfiction, vintage science fiction, Michael K. Vaughan and his love of the pulps, but also his love of the Greek and Roman classics. You have Kevin Toll Reads holding up a pile of Lee Child novels and just loving them. Not asking for any apology. He's not making any apologies, not asking for forgiveness. He's just saying what he loves about them. And on and on and on. You've got Chris at Unlimited Reads talking about Tom Clancy like nobody else on BookTube is, just because he loves them and knows the books really well. We are that kind of community now. We are as diverse as the reading public. So don't contour yourself to any perceived fads. Just tell us what you're reading and what you think about it, what you want to read and why, maybe what you're writing, what you have read in the past. And one other thing is a little bit harder to gauge, but I still like it. I still like it as advice. Of course, I'm going to say don't slurp. I am confident that you can get through a 15-minute video without eating and drinking. I'm confident that you can do that. I would say don't slurp. But another major thing, the major thing is focus on what you're doing. You don't have to have a script. You don't even have to have bullet points. But before you hit record, concentrate on what you want to do in this video, instead of just wandering into it like Brown's cows, wandering around for a while and wandering out of it. That would be some advice. Nietzsche and Wig. I rediscovered my beloved Lion Publishing children's Bible. I spent so many happy hours with it. I rank it with Byron's Destruction of Sennacherib in terms of how its dramatic power. I suppose before I read your comments tonight, I should probably just give a preemptive heavy sigh. Cosmic Gaze, 1994. Steve, I remember in a past stream you said you have read writings by every British monarch. Are there any published books that have writings by Mary I? No, not that I know of. I don't think there are enough. Auntie Gaia is responding to Nietzsche and Wig. Jack O'Hara says, do you believe in rekindling old flames, or should they stay in the past? People's emotional connection and sexual connection have lifespans. Nobody wants to admit that. It's only a very rare case where two people evolve. People are emotionally, I hope, always emotionally evolving. And love is when two people are emotionally evolving and hit the same point at the same moment at the right time. The two people keep emotionally evolving. Now, maybe their love will mean they will evolve together, but usually not. Usually they will emotionally evolve in different trajectories at different paces. And so you really can't expect old flames to stay current. So when you say rekindle, I want to say be their friends. But the romance was probably part of just the right conjunction at the right time. It's probably not rekindleable. You're not the same people anymore. So, but anyway, Quentin Curious Volumes is here. Is Chicago the worst musical? I think it might be. It might be. It just might be. Nietzsche and Wig finishing McCullough's History of Christianity. What I most loved about the book, here we go. Arianism. Its covalence with modern philosophy. What's it going to be? Certainly not the wonderful writing. What I most loved about the book was how it showed how man-made the religion was, and his sarcastic digs and jibes every now and then were delightful. Oh, you are talking about the writing. Wonderful. We agree. We agree. Yes. His dry humor is wonderful. Cosmic Gaze, 1994. As a resident of Massachusetts, does it annoy you that men like John Hancock and Samuel Adams have been completely forgotten? Well, I'm not all that broken up about John Hancock, but it bothers me, Samuel Adams. It bothers me that when you talk to Americans and you mention Samuel Adams, they're going to talk about a beer. And maybe not even that outside of New England. They're not going to talk about the guy who is almost more responsible for the revolution than anybody else. And that's a shame. Nietzsche Wing is responding to somebody else. Chrisam70 says, hi, Frida. How's baby girl doing? I don't know if you're going to be able to see her. She's just a tiny little bundle of fur over in a pile of sheets and blankets on her chair. Auntie Gaia says, nice mate. No idea what that means. Tolstoy 111 says, is Kathy Acker as bad as I've heard? I don't know what you've heard. If you've heard she's terrible, you're right. Auntie Gaia says, the police love their gadgets and toys, don't they? Yeah, they do. I should count my blessings that it's sirens instead of guns. Jenny Park says, never come between a first responder and their junk food. The new terror Billy says, hi, Steve. Please recommend some great booktubers for classic fiction book reviews and recommendations. No idea what you mean by classic fiction. But you've got Victober going on all month long, and you go look up Victober, you'll get a host of great channels talking about meat and potatoes books from the Victorian era. At least that's a start. Tolstoy 111 is responding to Quaint and Curious Volumes. Brian Constantine is responding to Quaint and Curious Volumes. Peyton says, what are your thoughts on archetypes? Is the president archetype fading from world just like how the president archetype is fading from America? Are councils of leadership going to be the future? I think a lot of this question is beyond me, but councils of leadership are not going to be the future. No. To put it mildly, no. Dictatorships are going to be the future. Hannah's Books is here. Hey, I heard that crack about some of us wine and calzones not being hip. I was my darling, I wasn't referring to you. I could have been, but I wasn't. I was actually looking forward, not backwards. Oh God, I have only the dregs here as visitors, I guess, is the lesson we're learning here. Cosmic Gaze 1994. What hagiographic biography has angered you the most? In recent years, probably Ron Chernow's biography of George Washington, because his Alexander Hamilton book was so good. Probably that was the one. Michael H. I've been keeping a journal for about a month thanks to an old video of yours. It's been very beneficial. When and how often do you revisit your journals? I almost never revisit my journals. I don't. That bothered me for a while. I used to think that I should, but now I honestly think that's not the point. The journal is for, if it's for some future me, it's for a future me that I am not yet. It's the exercise of writing it that I like. Monet Doyle, I'm reading a book by a writer named C.R. Jane, whose books are incredible. That name sounds familiar. Nietzsche and Wig says, you have inspired me to get rid of large numbers of my books. Inevitably, I still have some that have been on my shelves for 4 years now unread. Most avid book readers that I know have far too many print and paper books. I know, again, that I have no grounds to talk, but at least I am constantly getting rid of mine. I'm keeping my nose above water by constantly getting rid of books in addition to taking them in. I haven't taken any secondhand books this week. I have a feeling that's going to change next week. Peyton says, I wouldn't ask you a have you read question. Good. I haven't been any yet this time. But I want to ask a have you been question before, or are those off limits? Have you been? Have you been questions might well, I don't know what you're going to ask, but they might well be off limits because I've been everywhere in the world except Australia and New Guinea. And invariably, when I tell that to people, they say, oh, really? So you've been to Alaska? Okay, let's review. I've been everywhere except Australia and New Guinea. Everywhere else, every square inch of ocean, every square inch of land, including your backyard. I have been everywhere else except there. So if those aren't the things you're about to say in a have you been question, then you can answer it yourself. But anyway, have you been to, yes, see what I mean? Have I been to Kavik, Alaska? I think you and Sue Akins would be friends. Jenny Park says, Steve's been everywhere. He's probably in your back garden right now. Exactly. Andrew says, my copy of Comics 1964-2004 arrived today. 2024. Sadly, our fave, Herb Trimpley, is not represented. They left Herb Trimpley out. Please tell me there's an index reference at least for George Tuska. Or Michael K. Vaughan's beloved Mike Plug. God help us. Cosmic Gaze 1994. Why do you think the French, Russians, and Austrians accepted absolute monarchy longer than the English/British? I think it would boil down to finances. I think not to give economists swelled heads, but I think it would boil down to finances. If you've got 10 people on a street and suddenly they all have lots of disposable income, they're not going to want an absolute monarch. They're going to be a lot more thin-skinned about being bossed around like a serf if money is freely circulating. And there was, of course, there was widespread poverty in England. I think it was a lot more widespread in pre-modern France and Russia, especially, and also Austria. I imagine there are lots of other factors too, but I would say it boils down to money, spending money. Sid says, do you think biographers should avoid lengthy discussions about persons' lives and their subject if they're still alive? I don't put any strictures on biographies at all, one way or another. They can do whatever they want. Just convince me. That's all. Just convince me. Leo Percara, hello, Steve. Don't ban me from your very busy and famous Discord. I don't have a Discord. I don't have one. But have you read the whole of Redwall, and do you like them? Is it worth going through the entire series? All right. Well, no, I haven't read all of Redwall. I had plenty at book number 2. They're junk. So I didn't go any further than book number 2. So there you go. There's a have you read question that I can answer. I have not read all of Redwall, and I wouldn't do it. The New Terror, Billy, what book can you recommend to someone who only has a few months to live? I wouldn't recommend such a thing. And I wouldn't make a blind recommendation anyway. I don't care if they have 2 months to live or 200 years to live. I still want to know what they like to read. Back of the question, at the back of the question, what book would you recommend to someone who only has a couple of months to live, is the belief that the book is preparing them to do something. And it isn't, because they're going to die, and the chemicals that make up their brain are going to dissolve. They're not going anywhere, so they don't need any preparation for the journey. but maybe that's not back of your question. But I wouldn't at all. I would want to know what they like to read, and probably I would say don't read in your last 2 months to live. Do all sorts of other things. Don't do that. Anti-Gaia says, speaking of speciesism, would you consider Planet of the Apes a commentary on speciesism? It tries to be. I think it wants to be. It is, yes, but not the way the author thinks. Especially the more recent films from Rise of the Planet of the Apes onward. The more recent films are a little less ham-handed about it, but they are the movies, recent or not, and the book are very much comments on speciesism. Yes, let's just put it that way. Bottle Imp Book says, I was running out of characters, Steve. Does Amazon inform you if they remove the reading rights of a book? I don't know the details. I would assume they just remove the book. Martin says, is Muriel Spark worth reading besides The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie? Yes, she is. Peyton says, can you ask a dog about subjects? What can you talk about? There's no way I'm going to be able to explain this. Forget trying to explain how you communicate, but can you list a few topics you can talk about? Are you the only one who can speak dog? There's no way that I'm going to be able to convey this to you. Everything that you think of when you think of language is objects. Your entire concept of language is objects. Your language originated as a means of categorizing objects. I want to convey that object to you. Maybe because you can't see it, or maybe because I see it different than you. Maybe I think it's more important than you. It's all object related, to such an extent that I bet when I say that, you literally can't conceive what an alternative would be. And there are plenty of alternatives. There's no way that I can explain it. I've tried this many times. I've tried it with linguists, and it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. What do we talk about? What things do you talk about? What objects do you talk about? So I'm not laughing at you. This is unlocking lots and lots of memories. This is just fruitless. I've learned from experience that it's, what? Oh no, the chat jumped. We were talking about dogs. We were trying to talk about dogs. We were failing to talk about dogs. Let's go back. It was Peyton, I think, who was asking the question. Let's see here. There we go. Bottle Imp Books. I love my Kindle. I used to have hundreds of vintage penguins, etc., but the print was often too small. I never got around to reading them. Street Medic says there are many ways species can communicate. Even plants can communicate with each other chemically, but what the evidence I'm aware of suggests is humans can express abstract ideas. Right. I'm never clear when humans say that what they mean by abstract ideas. I'm never clear about that, but I guess philosophy, I guess. Apes don't read philosophy. Yes, they do, Otto. They just don't understand it. George says, I was interested when you theorized that Metamorphosis was Kafka's response to the fundamental changes of the 20th century. Could you elaborate on what you mean by that? Not in the chat, I couldn't. No. Sid says, is the Book of Power still on track to get published? I read your review of John Quincy Adams' diaries today, and it was instantly made it jump to the top of my TBR. The Book of Power. Yeah. I need to talk to Alex Serrando. He was in this chat. I don't know if he is anymore, but I need to talk to him about that. It is ready to go. It is a finished book. So it could use more. It could use more stuff from me. More additions from me. But thank you for the compliment. I hope it was a compliment. Peyton, last dog question. The way you communicate with a dog is the same way a dog communicates with a dog, right? So understanding how they communicate will answer the question, right? Well, okay, first of all, there are elements of the way they communicate with each other that I don't duplicate. I don't have the anal glands for it. I don't actually pee in public. I don't actually poop in public. There's just no way. There's just no way. God, I'm sorry. Nietzsche and Wig says, do you ever wish the Reformation had never happened and the modern spirit of Erasmian humanism had triumphed? What a better world that would be. I wish it all the time. I wish it all the time. Denson Camp just received a copy of the Penguin Classic Deluxe edition of The Tale of Genji in the mail and jumped around my room in excitement. Isn't it beautiful? Anything I should really know before leaping in? Read the Wikipedia entry. Read the Wikipedia entry a few times. You don't need to worry about spoiling the plot of a 1,000-year-old novel that's 1,000 pages long. Read the Wikipedia entry until you know what you're getting into, quite literally. The last thing you want is for incomprehension of stuff to get in the way of you enjoying the book. So de-glamorize that and just read about the stuff ahead of time. Peyton says, sometimes I think I speak conversational cat. Take my word for it. You don't. I don't, but you don't, definitely. And you know how you can tell that? There's a way that you can tell that. If you go on YouTube, you can find videos of owners who put little cameras on their cats' collars and just let them go into the neighborhood. And the camera records what they do all day. You will see right away it is a fundamentally alien world, and you don't know what's going on at all. You don't know what's going on. Brian Considine, sadly, 800K award would maybe let you buy one investment home. That's not sad. It wouldn't be an investment home. It would be a home. It would just have apartments for other people. But that's fine. The one is all that anyone can live in at any one time. Aslan says, any advice for someone about to start Books of the New Sun? It seems a fascinating series, but also very intimidating. It's really good. It has a bad rap as intimidating. It's adult fiction, not in the sense of blue content, but in the sense of Gene Wolfe, the author, is expecting you to pull your weight, as opposed to being spoon-fed like you get in almost all contemporary science fiction and fantasy. You're not going to be spoon-fed. You're going to need to pull your own weight, but there's nothing should be intimidating about that. Street Medic, but other species do appear to be on a verge of abstract language. Vervet monkeys, for example, have different calls that distinguish threats from the ground, from predators in the air. Karen P says, best Maggie Smith for me, Private Lives on the stage at the Schubert Theater, Boston in the 70s. Oh, good for you. Nietzsche and Wig, I'm excited to read my Penguin English Library version of Wuthering Heights. Big fan of the cover designs for those books. I am too. I almost never see them secondhand here. Peyton says, does America need to move forward with reparations for slavery in order to cure itself of racism? I'm not suggesting that alone will do it, but it is an important peace. Germany paid reparations. No. There's no such thing as blood guilt. There's no such thing as blood guilt. Children are innocent. Children wipe the slate clean. Which means the son is not guilty in any way for the crimes of the father. And the grandson is not in any way guilty of the crimes of the father. And that means that a society made of grandsons is not in any way, they do not owe anything. They owe regret, they owe honest histories, but they do not owe money. They do not owe reparations. There is no such thing as blood guilt for anything, whether it's the murdering of the Messiah or slavery. There is no such thing as blood guilt. Children are innocent. So no reparations, no, to anybody. Street Medic says vervets also appear to chatter during grooming, which I guess explains smack talk at the barbershop. Friday night on the small penises. Aslan says, I asked ChatGPT once to recommend me nonfiction booktubers, and you were up there in the list. The AI knows you. You're kidding me. Please tell me that that's not true. Jenny Park says, Skynet is watching you. Well, you're joking, of course, but there is a helicopter that showed up about 15 minutes ago and is now staying in station around this quarter mile, which I assume means we're about to get bombarded with sirens that are not just people running red lights to get to donuts. I'm assuming there's a problem somewhere. Freeman says, if you ever want to add playlists to your channel, I can do that fairly easily. I sent you an email, but the subject is playlist assistance. Just reply back if interested. I thought I did reply back. It's an enormous undertaking, so it's not going to happen this year. There aren't going to be any enormous undertakings this year, except for the ones I'm already engaged in. There won't be any others. I agree that my channel should have lots of playlists. Anti-Gaia says, why the heck is Donald Trump returning to Butler, Pennsylvania? Is he going to use the occasion to propagandize about how it's Biden and Harris' fault his followers are so nuts? Well, Butler, Pennsylvania has become a source of intense MAGA mythology. There's a whole mythos about it, that if you don't follow MAGA circles, you won't have any idea. And it's hard to follow their circles because they have been bounced off of every major social media platform except Nazi Twitter. I have a whole bunch of theories as to why he's going back there, but it's just going to... the main thing that's going to annoy me about it is not him going back there and not the faint possibility he's hoping for more trouble, but the fact that the American news media is fascist enabling. They are not going to misreport the event. That is often being said by critics of the media, and it is dead wrong. They are not misreporting. They are lying. They are flat out lying. And that's what they're going to do about this event. It's horrifying to me to think that is something founding fathers didn't think. They never expected that one branch of government would fall supine, just the willing servile slave of a figure in another branch of government. They expected that ambition would counteract ambition. And they also never expected that the press would become powerful enough and also want to facilitate fascist overtaking of the country. They never imagined that. They imagined an independent press, not one that was in favor of a fascist takeover of the country. That no one saw coming, including me. I saw a lot of this coming. I didn't see that coming. Tolstoy 111. I'm surprised people haven't tried to cancel Maggie Smith due to her being Desdemona in the 1965 film with Olivier in blackface. How could you participate, etc.? Maybe they don't know about it. It's not on their Twitter feed. Monet Doyle says only one jelly donut. All right. That reading guy, a good tip for new booktubers, lots of slurping. No slurping. No. Jenny Parks and cats, just to know. No, you don't need cats. Of course, we're not talking about cats. We know what part of a cat's anatomy you're going to see. It's the part they intentionally show to the camera, right up close. And it's not their pretty little faces either. Anti-Gaia says, isn't Maggie Smith the woman who plays Wendy in the movie Hook? Yes. Hello, boy. Yeah, pretty much the only good moment in that whole movie. Big Shep says, hey, Steve, I started reading Moby Dick in part, I think, because of your videos. Time will tell if it will cure me of my dude bro lit taste or make me an even worse version of myself. I can help. I can help. Mark says, both my sister and good friend of mine are teachers, and according to them, the decline in reading is downstream from more pressing, more terrifying issue, the decline of literacy. I would believe it. I would believe it. They must be have so many depressing stories from the front lines. Mark says, it's less that kids won't read and more that they can't, and my sister and friend attribute this to the inferior pedagogical approach that have been adopted over the past decade or two. Could be. They would know better than I would. That reading guy, but Steve, slurping a cup of coffee or tea on camera is a vibe. I know. I see it in new channels a lot. They make a point of doing it artificially. Nevertheless, it's unbelievably bad, unbelievably rude, unbelievably unprofessional. Jenny Park says, and don't forget your vapes and massive headphones. Jim says, hi, Steve. It's Samuel. Is Samuel Beckett a dude bro author in your opinion? Oh, yes. Ben Bell says, hey, Steve, what did you make of Chaos by Tom O'Neill? Not much. Monet Doyle says, in school, they should never do assigned reading. Picking a book for a student to read is not a good idea. Right. But the alternative requires a lot more hands-on care and also a lot more reading competence among teachers. And most of the time, both of those are unavailable. That reading guy, would you consider Jordan Peterson's daughter a dude bro? Oh, yeah. Manny says, hello, Steve. Did you finish The Rings of Power? I did. Don't know why, but I did. Michael H says, will you please recommend the best biography of Garibaldi? I don't have enough of them under my belt to recommend one above the other. I think I've read 2 biographies of Garibaldi in English. Both of them are fairly boring. Nietzschean Wig says, do you include 19th century non-British literature in the context of Victober reading? I would like to, but the creators and hosts of the event say no. British and Irish. Part of me feels it would be Anglo-centric to say that Dostoevsky, for example, was a Victorian writer. And yet, the forces in the air that I described in my own Victober video affected him as well. Him, everyone in the Indian subcontinent, everyone in France, everyone in America. But no, we're sticking to Britain and Ireland. That reading guide, do you dip into short story collections or read them all the way through? It depends. I usually tell myself that I'm just going to dip in. Sometimes I get caught up in them and just read them through. Mostly it's dipping in now, unless it's a short story collection that I haven't read. Monet Doyle says they should bring back the show Reading Rainbow back to television. If not Reading Rainbow, I mean, I agree, but that's the way. That is actually the way. Not necessarily Reading Rainbow, but there has got to be some incentive structure that not only encourages kids to read, but encourages them to think of it as fun, as wonderful. There's got to be something like that isn't part of school. And Romper Room and Sesame Street and Reading Rainbow, they do a lot, but they can only do so much. And there's so much more that could be done. Given the power of social media, there's so much more that could be done along those lines. YouTube actually could be very effective if I wish, but no. New Terra Billy says, do you like Saramago's books? Where should I start? I do like his books. Yeah. Maybe start with his book about Jesus, since you're familiar with the material. Street Medic says, how about the Electric Company, Morgan Freeman as easy reader? Yes, there should be more of that. That is what will work. That reading guy says, you've been everywhere. What was it like visiting the Galapagos Islands or that one obscene dot in the middle of the ocean? I have been to those obscene little dots. I've been to the things that are on the YouTube videos. I've also been to places that aren't on the YouTube videos. There are plenty of little dots in the ocean that you can go to that don't have names, that no one goes to them. No one, they're really hard to get to and really, really inhospitable. The Galapagos Islands as well. Your backyard as well. Tolstoy 111. Oh no, the chat jumped. Here, let's go find Tolstoy 111 and see what he's going to disagree with me about this time. Regarding accepting absolute monarchy, Catholic and Christian Orthodox countries are far more likely to be that than Protestant countries. The centralization is already there. Right on cue. Andrew says, will you be reading Kurtzman and Wood's Superman parody, Super Duper Man, to help celebrate Harvey Kurtzman's 100th birthday? Can you guess? If you had to guess. Uh, that reading guy says, what was it like visiting Atlantis? Atlantis is not real. Sarah Bell says, glaucoma troubling you long. Okay. Sid says, can you use your powers on wolves? Well, that would be unbelievable, wouldn't it? Wolves, coyotes, foxes. That just wouldn't be believable. Street Medic says, objects as the basis of language, you sound like a Wittgenstein. Cosmic Gaze 1994 says, what would you say to some people who say the founders never intended for America to be a democracy? I'd say they should learn how to read. Nietzsche and Wig says, when I was 17, I read Robert Massey's amazing biography of Peter the Great. What kind of buzz existed when it came out, and did you care for all the film adaptation inspired by I am a big fan of Maximilian Schell, but I did not like the adaptation at all. But the book was hugely buzzed, and I loved it. It was universally praised and deserved it. The Big Ship, what's your opinion on Roadside Picnic and its adaptation Stalker? What do you prefer? Why do I feel like you hate them both? I do hate them both. I bet you can guess why. Street Medic says, up and down are abstract ideas and verbs distinguishing between threats from an eagle in the air and a lion on the ground being generalized through evolution. Okay. All right. On a planet with gravity, up and down are not abstract ideas, but okay, fine. I get you. I guess I get your point. Michael H says, is Raymond Carver a dude bro author or just his shoddy imitators? No, he is. He's an dude bro writer. Manny says, I've recently seen a lot of non-dude bros take a liking to a lot of dude bro authors like McCarthy and Vonnegut. What do you, the dudeliest bro of them all, make of it? They aren't non-dude bro. What makes you think they're non-dude bro? I don't accept the premise of the question. Those authors, those crappy authors, speak to dude bros. So if they speak to your people, the people you're talking about, then they're not non-dude bros. Cosmic Gaze says, is Ernest Newman's 4-volume biography of Richard Wagner worth reading? No. No, it isn't. Big Shep says, the so-called puzzle aspect of Book of the New Sun was interesting, but I honestly didn't care much about what happened to Severian. Severian is difficult to like, but there's a lot more to it than just a disinterested interesting. Nietzsche and Whig, what stopped Federalists and Democrats guillotining each other like Frenchmen? A commitment to property and English common law, the relative weakness of the established church, or something else? Yeah, perfect for a chat. Aslan says, I was not kidding about ChatGPT, but I don't remember what your point was. Street Medic says, sorry, I'm reading the Encyclopedia Britannica's Guide to the Brain, and it's referring to language reminded me of how a few books on the evolution of language and abstract thought. I always have trouble with abstract thought. The term abstract thought. I always have trouble with I live in and recommend an entirely 100% religion-free world. And I always worry about the term abstract thought along those lines. Freeman says, the playlist thing is automated. I can create them in seconds using the video titles as the key. Okay. Cosmic A's 1994, Jefferson versus Hamilton, who was right? God. Okay, the chat is going out of control. Michael H says, do you think those opposed to MAGA need to be more vocally and demonstrably patriotic? I think I've heard David Brooks argue for this. I would settle, if not for patriotic, I would settle for just more vocal than they are. Way too many communities in America, the normal people, know that there are Trump cult members in town and don't say anything. Just look there. I don't want to bother. I won't go to their shop. I won't patronize their business, but I don't want to bother. You should say something. Those people should say something. You're a nut. You're in a cult. Cosmic Gaze is referring to Nietzsche and Whig. Street Medic says, I read a book a while back about how cats saved agriculture and thus allowed the development of civilization by eating vermin like mice. Can't remember the name of the book, though. Aslan says, is it safe to assume you hated Godel Escherpach? Yes, it is safe to assume that. Peyton says, how have you been through every square inch of the Amazon rainforest? Do you mean physically everywhere or astral projection? No, I mean everywhere. Every square inch of everywhere. It's easier to say that than to list off the little square inches that I haven't got to. I was, once upon a time, extremely well-traveled, is what I'm trying to say. Paul Marin, oh my God, the chat jumped as soon as I got to Paul Marin's razor-sharp cheekbones. Are you still accumulating Dostoevsky? Have a favorite translation of The Idiot? I am still accumulating Dostoevsky, yes. Slowly. I haven't been doing much in the way of used book shopping. What have we got for Dostoevsky? What have we got for Dostoevsky? Let's see. I think I've got a couple of really dandy items, don't I? Yeah. Yeah, I do. I have let me see if I can show you these. A couple of them. I have been accumulating ebooks. Soon I will be in a position to accumulate print and paper books as well. Let me see. Oh no, these aren't showing me the covers. Well, just as well. It's just as well. I have been accumulating Dostoevsky, and I intend to keep doing that. I may even look at the multi-volume biography, although I swore I wouldn't. Uh, uh, let's see here. Cosmic Gaze. Why was Queen Victoria so infatuated with Albert? Well, a point that gets lost. If you look at really early engravings and portraits, you might be able to perceive it. He was unbelievably good looking. So was his brother. They were unbelievably good looking young men. But also she had never been loved by a man. And he was a very loving person. In addition to being everything else that he was a very loving person. So her first love was also her first infatuation and her first friend as an adult. It was the whole package. So it would have been hard for an impressionable young girl not to be infatuated. Super duper Nova, speaking over surprise over non-cancellation. I'm surprised no one mentions Clint Eastwood's Almost 13 is good enough scene. Yeah. Street Medic says Gödel Escherbach is a masterpiece. It is crap. Just a big pile of crap. Aaron 007 says, I think TikTok is the new reading rainbow. It's not in my nature to be optimistic, but I think this next generation of kids is actually reading more, and the tide is turning. We'll know when they get to college. TikTok may be occupying the position of the new reading rainbow, and you might be right. It might be sparking enthusiasm that people are just disregarding. I'm largely guilty of disregarding it myself. Maybe I shouldn't do that. Nishan Wig says, are you going to wade into the Wuthering Heights casting scandal? I, for one, do not think Heathcliff has to be black. The text is ambiguous, I think. It's absurd. I'm not going to wade into it. It's just absurd. And also tired. We should stop doing this. People should stop doing this. No one likes it, and people should stop doing it. That's it. Anyway, Cosmic Gaze, Steve, how did you enjoy North Sentinel Island? Yeah, this is going to be a Have You Been. We're going to start a Have You Been tradition here. Aslan says, any good fiction about the quest for Atlantis that you recommend? Plato made it up. He invented it out of whole cloth. So no, no, there's that great movie, the cartoon movie. Sure, that's very interesting, but otherwise, no. Tolstoy 111, the conundrum with teaching kids to love reading is that it's the only core school subject that's also seen as an art, as opposed to math, science, and history. Yeah, you could get around that conundrum if parents love to read. That's where the kids will get it if they're going to get it anywhere. Nishan Wig says, do you think Tom Holland's argument in Dominion about Christianity's role in shaping the West holds up? Yes. If anything, it's understated. Brandon Henry says, how did you like the new Richard Powers novel? I rather liked it. The Big Shep says, Steve, since you've been to the island from Lost, I have to ask the numbers, Steve. But I'm not talking about imaginary places. Oh no, though, the chat jumped. There we go. Well, read. Steve, I like the profile painting of you on your wall. Did Rembrandt paint it? That is the great Hans Holbein. And it's not me. Cosmic Gaze, why does Trump love mentioning Viktor Orban? Because he wants to be Viktor Orban. He sees these people as what he wants to do. He has said what he wants to do. He wants to rule as a dictator and eradicate the Constitution. And he has a system in place to allow him to do that unless the military stops him. And the point that I want to stress here is that if the military stops your government from becoming a dictatorship, your government is a dictatorship. That's not a win. Anyway, Street Medic, most people now just associate Wagner with Apocalypse Now if they know who Wagner is in the first place. Paul Marin, are you still planning a co-writing project in November? Well, I was planning one with Janet Wertman, but the writing project, the paying writing project that I've taken on is looking like it's going to be bigger and more involved than I thought. And doing a writing project in November we're not just doing that. Janet and I were proposing to each other. We were thinking about creating a thing, not just writing together in November, but creating a space where other people could go. That requires a lot of thought and organization. She's really good at both of those, so I'm not saying that I need to do it, but it seems like something that I shouldn't be dodging in and out of. I should be able to commit to it, and that's not, I don't think, going to be able to happen in this year. William Doyle, Steve, is U.S. Grant's redemption arc in the recent decades since Chernow's biography? It happened before Chernow. Gene Edward Smith's book was well before Chernow's book, and H.W. Brand's as well, I think. Warranted. It is largely warranted. Yeah, I remember the amazing feeling when I read Gene Edward Smith's book on Grant and realized how much of the vilification of Grant the politician, Grant the president, I had been taking basically on the word of people who hated him. Anything to read that is more critical of Grant, I can't help but like the man for some reason. Yeah, me too. I shouldn't, but I do. But I would read all of the spate of recent biographies. Don't miss Gene Edward Smith. That is a really good book. Chernow's book is very nearly as good, maybe better. I wish that I had a copy, a print and paper copy of Chernow's book. There was one time I went to the Brattle, I think last year, where I saw on the same day in the sale lot, both the paperback and the hardcover. I passed them both up. Let's see here. Anti-Gaia says, and will be mobilized for your head if you speak out against the dear leader, should he come back and give them carte blanche with infinite pardons. Yes. Yeah, it'll take them a while to get to me. There are a lot of people who will be dead by March. If it's just a month until we see. Cosmic Gaze says, was John C. Calhoun the worst president in U.S. history? No, Donald Trump was the worst president in U.S. history. Donald Trump orchestrated and incited an armed insurrection to overthrow the United States government and install himself as a dictator over the dead body of his vice president. No other U.S. president has come anywhere close to that. Nothing that any U.S. president has done has been as bad as that or anywhere close. So you're living in historical times. David Galloway, I will read Wide Sargasso Sea for Victober. Could you really blame me? No. Manny says, yeah, there is a lot of abstract thought in the multi-volume Dostoevsky biography, but I still love it. William Doyle says, was Constance Garnett British? If she was, then the Russians count for Victober. That's a good point. Kevin J.N. says, do you still receive books from Noam Chomsky? I haven't heard his name mentioned in quite a while. I figured the wars in Israel or her neighbors would have brought him back to TV. He's on death's doorstep. So he's not going to be on TV for this or any other subject. And I don't get books. I don't get any of the books that are cobbled together about him. I imagine there's a biography in the works. I think it'll be out in 2 years. I might get that. But you're not going to see him on TV. You're going to see, he's probably going to die before the end of the year. Street Medic says, Grant's taking of Vicksburg is the most important battle of the Civil War, in my opinion, because it cut off the Confederacy from resupply. Gettysburg was the biggest, but the war went on for a year after. Well, it's a vexed question, right? People love to argue what the most important battle of the Civil War was. Oh no, it was Kirill Pushkin who was next. Here we go. Hi, Steve. Have you read the novel by the great Russian writer Shishkov, The Ugrum River? Sorry for asking, have you read? If yes, did you like it? I have not read this book, but that does not absolve you from asking a have you read question. Anti-Gaia says, I think it's safe to say the Enlightenment was more responsible for shaping Western civilization than theology. Than theology, yes. Than Christianity? No. But thumbs up for the Enlightenment. Sid says, should I read Samuel Eliot Morison or Henry Adams' History of America first? What's apples and oranges? It's apples and oranges. I mean, Henry Adams is period history by this point. You would be reading a historical work about history. Morrison is much more contemporary, so it'd be two radically different reading experiences. They're both really good. Aslan says, yeah, I love the cartoon movie about Atlantis and was looking for a novel that's similar. I don't know a novel that's similar. Taylor Caldwell wrote a really good novel about Atlantis, about life in Atlantis, but it wasn't an archaeological search for Atlantis. That the new Terror Billy says, do you like Samuel Butler's books? Which one is the best to start? I don't particularly know. Tolstoy 111, remember people 20 years ago saying that kids who read Harry Potter will grow up into voracious readers. They actually grew up to be adults who read Harry Potter. I don't agree. I think the Harry Potter books made a whole generation of really good readers. Nishin Wig says, I have Teke's biography of the Shah and Milani's, which is better? I think I've only read Milani's, and it wasn't all that good. Tolstoy 111 is responding to Street Medic. Cosmic A says, was the John Birch Society's wanted for treason poster regarding JFK that appeared a day before he was assassinated the freakiest coincidence? Coincidental to what? I'm not sure I understand the question. Manny says, it was pretty impressive how the Rings of Power managed to get progressively worse every episode. Every single episode was worse than the one before it. And kind of interesting in how episode 8 had all those awful moments shoved into one episode. Yeah. Street Medic, agriculture is the basis of civilization because it led to settlements and engineering, medicine, art, literature, etc. Religion was just a drag on it, but monasteries did save Greek and Roman writing. Yeah, but we're not talking about the basis of civilization. We're talking about things that made it flourish or go. Yeah, the basis, sure, but we weren't talking. Yeah, religion is not the basis of society, no. But in terms of shaping, in terms of our patrimony now, let's see here. The new Terror Billy, who is the most underrated Russian novelist in your opinion? Probably Sholokhov. Probably Quiet Flows of Dawn. I'd say probably him. Underrated is difficult because does that apply to popular writers who aren't given critical acclaim? Or is just authors that no one reads? You would go either way. If it's the one, I would say that it would be Quiet Flows of Dawn. If it's the other, I would say it would probably be Boris Pasternak. Oh, got the chat jumped again. There we go. Cosmic Gaze. A fundamentalist Christian once told me that if you doubt the Bible is literally true, then you cannot know if Caesar really existed. Yeah, I get this. His inscriptions are on monuments. His name and likeness are on coins. He is described by eyewitnesses, contemporary eyewitnesses, at every stage of his career, not just once he was an emperor, not just once he was in charge of Rome. At every stage of his career, he is indisputably a historical figure. Whereas someone wrestling with an angel, I can doubt that without making Julius Caesar an imaginary creature. Manny says, have you read Calicane yet? No, I haven't, nor do I intend to. No one is going to think that you are cool at wine and calzones if you can't talk about Calicane. Street Medic says, Pasternak. I don't know what that's in response to. Aslan says, Harry Potter made me go back to reading as an adult. I think it did a lot of people. Big Shep says, I remember you said James Joyce had at least 3 contemporaries in Ireland who were better than him. Who are you talking about? Oh, come now. You can name them yourself. You don't need me to do that. Kirill Pushkin says, if I find Shishkov's Urgrim River, I will send you. No, you will not. Do not send me a book. He also wrote a wonderful 3-volume on Pugachev, if you know such a historical character in Russia. Okay, great. I've never seen these books, but even if you do, don't send them. Nietzsche Wig says, Victober means I can consider getting to The Tennyson, Kipling, Morris, and George Eliot still on my shelf. Well, you should. You should get to all the things that are still on your shelf. Willie Doyle says, finished Brides Have Revisited. Wow, you were right. It's not all claret and plover's eggs. Second half of that novel is grim. Second half of the novel is the part that nobody even remembers exists. They all remember the romance of Oxford, a city in Aquitaine, but they don't remember the rest of it at all. it's like you get to the part of the book where Cara is talking to Charles about Sebastian and saying that he's going to be ruined by alcohol if someone doesn't come along and stop him. And Charles is saying, oh, come now, we both drink. And she's saying, it's not the same. I've seen this. He's going to be destroyed by this. And we see that happen, but it's like readers get to that and think, oh, you're a downer. I'm just going to concentrate on the lovely Venice. William Doyle says, do you have to be a Catholic to find it satisfying? Is it meant to be unsatisfying? Great book either way. Tripp says, Steve, it sounds like you live near a war zone with all the sirens. What on earth is going on there? I don't. And if you were to come over here for wine and calzones, you would not notice. It's when I'm filming. Or Friday and Saturday night, people go nuts with drag racing and whatnot. But I don't live near a war zone. I don't. I walk my dog in this neighborhood. I smile and greet everybody. It is not what it sounds like. I know what it sounds like. Brian Constantine, maybe they should let Lord of the Rings of Power just go to the full 5 seasons they want. If it keeps getting worse and worse, maybe at some point the dial will get turned so far it flips around. No, it won't. No, there is no chance of getting quality from this. Instead, this is just going to be as close to a telling of Lord of the Rings as they can legally do, only with all the parts being played by Galadriel. Aaron 007 says, I think the difference between the Harry Potter and TikTok generations is that the TikTok kids are talking about lots of different books, not just one series, but it's not a bad comparison. Sid says, I grew up reading Harry Potter, and I think it turned out well if you ignore all the tentacle fiction in my tablet. There's nothing wrong with tentacle fiction. Estranged Joya says, Steve, you ever been married? I've been married several times, always to the same person. Tolstoy 111, in the spirit of Victober, ever see Topsy-Turvy? It captured the late Victorian era beautifully. It helps to like Gilbert and Sullivan. I liked it. I don't think I loved it. Manny, what is your favorite work by Sholokov? Meg. Paul Rosendale, Married. That's a first. Sid says, should I read a new translation of Dr. Zhivago? I didn't enjoy it very much. I don't know what it is about Zhivago that people don't. A generation ago, 50 years ago, people liked it, and they don't anymore. I don't know why. But no, if you didn't like it, then give it a wide berth until you change. We'll give it some time. Auntie Gaia says, what about Gogol, Steve? Yeah, Gogol's pretty underrated. And Estranged Joya says, if you could read only one country's literature, whose would it be? I have no idea. No idea at all. Probably ancient Rome. Street Medic says, never read Harry Potter. Never read Harry Potter. Probably should, but I couldn't get into the movies, and I know it's not fair, the books, but I never developed a desire to read them. Well, you're not, I should say you're not missing much. They're not good. I'm just talking about their effect on readers. That's all. Paul Rosendale says, I don't remember anyone asking that question before. Oh, people have asked that question many times. Tripp says, you talk a lot about dude bro books. How much of that is due to social media algorithms? And is there a similar thing happening to women readers, or is it just men? The thing that's happening to women readers isn't anywhere near as toxic as the dude bro movement. Creepypasta Goblin says, was Sean O'Casey one of the 3 Joyce superiors? Yes. It's not hard to find them. They're easy to see. They'll be in any Irish literature anthology, tucked into the corners, creeping between the legs of this great colossus. Nietzsche and Wig says, does Shaw work on stage? When I saw a clip of Peter O'Toole acting in an adaptation of Man and Superman, the dialogue sounded too windy and absurd to be taken seriously. It dates, yeah, unfortunately. I think a lot of it is brilliant, but it's very much of its time. No matter how much talent you put into it, it's very much of its time. Michael H. said, who would you say the best prose stylist in the contemporary hard-boiled mystery genre is? Maybe James Lee Burke. Maybe Walter Mosley's actually really good when he's on his game. When he's not phoning something in, he's really good. Jim, I would recommend Lewis Carroll over Harry Potter. Aslan says, how much of self-pub do you read? A lot. I read a lot. A lot of the services that I sign up for, these email services that send you the day's ebook deals, a lot of that is self-published or indie published. And also, it's also a job that I do. The reviewing that I do every day is self-published or indie published. So I end up reading a lot of it. Random reading pathways. That seems new to me. It is sad that a new generation of young readers will be deprived of Harry Potter and the reading positive world it invokes because of parents who cannot separate the art from the artist. They'll lose something. We have to hope there'll be other books, new books that'll take its place. Tolstoy 111 says the God/Caesar comparison reminded me of Matthew McConaughey's line in Contact when asked to prove there's a God. Prove you love your father. That was apparently intended to be a mic drop. I know. I know. I know. And Christian apologists will use that line even now. If they find some dummy to debate, they'll say, well, you can't prove that your wife loves you, but you believe it. And I always want the rational, their opponent, I always want their opponent to say, well, the fact that you say that I can't prove that my wife loves me says a lot more about your home life than it does about your God. Paul Rosendale says, Hair Ishivu is my hero. A Strange Joya says, why is the chick lit phenomenon not as toxic as the dude bro lit? Because it doesn't seek to enslave men. And the dude bro lit does. The dude bro sees women as non-human, barnyard animals. Street Medic says, if you don't like Gödel, Escher, Bach, may I assume you don't care for I Am a Strange Loop or The Emperor's New Mind? Yeah, you can assume that. In fact, probably out there on the internet, there is a review of mine at 2,500 words of I Am a Strange Loop. That review is out there somewhere, and it's not exactly kind. The author was not happy with it. Cosmic Gaze 1994 is House of Leaves a dude bro? Yes, it is. It's a dude bro Bible. Trip says, seems like a lot of amateur writing is really pretentious, more than professional. What causes that? Inexperience, lack of the hard edge world of editors and other critics, serious readers. A lot of these people are little hothouse flowers. Their friends only praise their work, and they have been told by an infinite number of people that you should only have cheerleaders in your life. You shouldn't have any friends who criticize anything you do at all. Cut them out if they do that. You don't have any time for negativity. But a lot of that pretentiousness has seeped into professional writing too, because a lot of that is true now for professional writing. They also have just circles and circles of positivity around them, of mental health days and whatnot. Peyton says, do you think Kathy Griffin should move before Trump is made dictator, if that ends up even happening? I like her a lot, but she did do headline that headless Trump photo. Will he do that to her? Well, Trump has a list, and she's on it, but she's not near the top. She's not even thinking about leaving the country. Not even thinking about it. All these people, not just her, she doesn't have much of a public profile, but all these people claiming, that we're right around the corner from a possible dictatorship. They're not looking at property in Portugal or somewhere outside extradition of the United States. They're not looking at property. They're not getting their visa in order. They're not liquidating assets. Not doing anything like that. They're not doing anything like that. So they obviously, on one fundamental level, do not believe it. A Strange Joya says, what is your favorite moment in Anna Karenina? I don't have a favorite moment in Anna Karenina. Michael H says, follow up on the hard-boiled prose stylists are either James Sallis or Reed Farrell Coleman worth my time? Reed Farrell Coleman is. Yeah, James Sallis, maybe. He has a new collection of short stories coming out that I might revise my estimation of him. Street Medic says, what do you think of Daniel Dennis' Consciousness Explained? I thought it was a little bit on the simple side. I won't say condescending. I don't think it was condescending. I don't think it was meant to be. I didn't like it at all. Jim says, ha, Steve is the best. I don't know what that's in reference to, but I like the sound of it. William Doyle says, on the topic of Anna Karenina, is it bad that I related so much with Levin? No, not at all. I can also tell that, oh, wait, what? No, what happened to, oh my God, what happened to the chat? I can also tell that he will forget about religion and get sucked into something new within a year of the end of the novel. Ben Bell says, Steve, did you like the Mothman Prophecies movie or book? No. Leo Percara, have there been a book like Reader's Manifesto lately, even though the manifesto is as relevant as ever? No, there hasn't been. No, there hasn't been, and there should be. There really should be. The only reason that it hasn't happened now is because you would lose everything if you did that now, because what would the targets be now? The targets would not be the half-baked pretentiousness of Cormac McCarthy or the wordiness of Toni Morrison. What would the targets be now? Identity politics, political posturing, social media slagging of enemies, and writing a book that tears those to pieces can ruin your life. Literally ruin, not your career, your life. It can literally ruin your life. So it won't happen. At least without, I mean, you could do it if you did it anonymously. Tolstoy 111 says, do you like Diderot's fiction? Candide has pushed that whole school aside. I don't like Diderot's fiction, no. I tried real hard a few years ago when he was all the rage. Tripp says, what was your impression of the VP debate? I thought it was largely a worthless exercise. It wasn't a debate. But J.D. Vance was lying. And I don't mean he was lying about the things he was saying. I mean he was lying about the way he is. He was lying about the way he is. I'm going to shake his hand. I'm going to wish him well and pray for him if he wins. Utter lies. Just utter lies. Only said so syrupy. Said so, come on, we're all friends here. He will watch Tim Walz be beaten to death. He will watch that happen. Stripped in a naked square and beaten to death with rods. He will watch that with a smile on his face. So it was revolting. It was a revolting performance. Brandon Henry. I'm impressed by Catherine Rundle's range from her book about John Donne to her YA fiction. I just started Impossible Creatures, and I get the feeling I'm going to love it. How do you like her work? I really do like her work. Chris Bianchi says, do you catch an advanced screening of Gladiator 2? It doesn't look promising. I have the screener for it. I don't go to screenings, obviously, but I have the screener for it, and I just haven't watched it. I am caught between Nosferatu and Megalopolis. I'm caught between two tall 6-pack a day tobacco addicts. Kevin JN says, I finished James this week. Wow, very impressed, but still not sure about the ending. Kind of lean towards things would not end well. Eric Zielinski says, do you have recommendations of books for young men that provide a positive masculine example rather than the dude bro junk? Yeah, there are lots of books that I don't know that the example has to be positive. The men in the books can still be toxic, but they can't be presented the way they are in Dude Bro. Toxic is not a goal. It can be a character trait. Ahab is pretty toxic, but it can't be a goal. It can't be anything you're supposed to even sotto voce admire. And no matter what Dude Bros tell me, they tell me until they're blue in the face, you are definitely supposed to admire the psychopaths in Cormac McCarthy. There's plenty of stuff that I'd recommend, plenty of writers that I'd recommend. Manny says, what about discussions are about economics, farming, and philosophy? Those were epic. I'm not sure what that refers to. Cosmic Gaze says, what do you think of traditionalist Catholics who say Mary the First and James the Second were not as bad as people say? I have said this before many times, not so much with James, but with Mary, I've said many times, you can use rhetoric from one end of the scale to the other, but dead bodies speak an irrefutable language. Dead bodies speak an irrefutable language. So that's usually what I say. Paul Rosendale, BPL Copley tomorrow, a perfect Saturday. Just go to the library. Go to the library on Saturday. Strange Joya says, what's your favorite writer from the Latin America boom? I don't know that I have one. I don't think I do. Street Medic says religion is, or maybe Mario Vargas Llosa. I don't know which boom you're talking about. You could be talking about an older boom. Street Medic says religion is nonsense, but it can be fascinating, and there is some beautiful prose in some texts. I agree with every part of that. The New Terror Billy, why don't you like Bukowski's books? Don't you think it's funny? No, they're not funny. They're dumb. Really, really dumb. Colombian Thunder, wait, you've seen the new Nosferatu? Is it good or bad? Yes, I have a screener. I've watched the screener over and over again. Over and over and over again. And I honestly don't know if it's good or bad. I think probably a purist for vampire movies, a purist for the old black and white Nosferatu movie would probably say it's very bad. I just love it. I just love it. It does everything that I want it to do. So I might not be able to say whether or not it's good or bad. Chris Bianchi says, "What were your thoughts on Megalopolis film student project?" I don't know what film student project means, but I think Megalopolis might be genius. I need to watch it a few more dozen times than I already have. Certainly, it's watchable. Uh, uh, Auntie Gaia says, "What is Vargas Llosa's best book?" Aunt Julia and the Scriptwriter. Estranged Joya says, "Yeah, Mario Vargas Llosa is hard." Okay, I don't know what hard means, but if he's part of what you're talking about as a boom, then I would definitely include him. He's written almost nothing that I didn't love. Although Jorge Amado, I don't know if he's part of that boom as well. He's also really, really good. And needs new translations. He needs a whole new rack of new translations of his works in beautiful new editions. You shouldn't have to go looking for those old white mass market paperbacks. Those are 50 years old. Tolstoy 111 says, do you like Nelson Algren? No. He's all but vanished. Yeah, he has, and he deserves to. He was just a period piece. Fine and dandy at the time, but he belongs in his time. I hate to say it, but the same thing is true of Booth Tarkington and a whole bunch of other people. They just let them go. Damien P says, "Hello, Steve. Is there any worthy info to be gleaned from either Jared Kushner, I assume that is, or John Bolton's books?" No. Tripp says, "Do you think Proust has had a negative influence on amateur/professional writers?" No, they don't read him. Colombian Thunder says, "Megalopolis looks so fascinating to me. The very mixture of negative reactions only makes me more curious." I'd love to know what you think when you watch it. Street Medic says, "Piketty's Capital in the 21st Century and Capital in Ideology provides a better platform than Project 2025, which is just an updated Mein Kampf." I don't know what that means. They don't provide the same kind of platform. I don't know what you're saying about Piketty's Capital in 21st Century. Michael H says, "I was born via cesarean section. You can't really tell, except every time I leave a house, I go out through the window." Comics Gaze 1994. "What do you think of Trump's Middle East policy will look like?" Just pay me. Do whatever the hell you want if you pay me. They have never stopped paying him. They bought America's most highly prized classified secrets. People died because of that. Agents in the field died because Trump shared that information with the Russians and the Saudis. People died. Agents died. It'll look like a bazaar. Estranged Joya says, "Who did you say needs a translation?" I am been working on a Pedro Paramo one. Jorge Amado needs a new set of translations. Nothing wrong with the old ones, but they're old. They either need to be reissued or he needs new translations, and a new appreciation would be nice for him. Chris Bianchi says, "Joker 2 doesn't look good. I didn't like the first one. I have the trailer and haven't looked at it. I don't think it's going to be the cultural touchstone that the first one was, so I haven't been curious at all to look at it." Tolstoy 111, "What's the effect of Proust on corporate boardrooms and MAGA dudes?" Yeah, exactly. None. David Calloway says, "Who to you is an example of genius cinema? Maybe two." What? High School Musical 1 and High School Musical 2. Paul Rosendale, "I recall that you do much of your reading at night. What time do you finally go to sleep?" It depends. It varies from night to night. If I'm all caught up in something, then I tend to postpone and feel a little bit thinner the next day. Sometimes I feel like getting more sleep than I usually do, and will cash things in at 3. Usually it's a little bit before dawn. Yeah, I do. I'm going to do a ton of reading tonight. Oh my god, a ton of reading, including really digging into this thing. Oh my, really. I read it. I want to really dig into it. DZGIN, "Do you know personally some actor/actress that you can say for sure that they are a good person, or any celebrity for that matter?" Sure. Well, there are some celebrities, but they're D-list or lower, so you wouldn't know their names. but I can definitely say they're good people. Uh, Higher than that, I don't know. Maybe ascending to the upper B list or the A list stops you from being a good person. So I don't know. It'll all depend on the visitor logs for Sean Combs's freakouts, I guess. Once I see those logs, I'll know. Anti Guy says Trump and Netanyahu are like two peas in a pod. Yes. Estranged Joya says Jorge Amado, I will work on it. Street Medic says Steve doesn't sleep. No, I do. I don't like it. I don't enjoy it. I don't know why the rest of you do. Anti Guy says Mean Girls is genius cinema. Street Medic says, what's the best classic movie you ever watched? It would depend on what you mean by classic. I don't know what you mean by classic. Ben-Hur is great. Lawrence of Arabia is great. Moby Dick is great. But The Lion in Winter is great. Broadcast News is great. I don't know what you mean by classic. Comics Gaze says, I remember you saying you didn't like the Andrew Roberts biography of George III. Why was it bad? Because it exonerates George III. It makes him not only a hero, but one of the greatest monarchs in English history. And he quartered troops on Boston Common. He quartered troops on Boston Common. He blockaded Boston and besieged it. So he's a bad guy. But I got the hardcover. I don't know if I mentioned it on this channel. Last year I got rid of the hardcover. I got it on this channel. I hauled it on this channel, but I got rid of it. I saw the hardcover at the Brattle and I got it and I reread it. I love the way Andrew Roberts writes. So I don't completely scorn the book anymore. I just don't like any of its conclusions. Sid says, how surprised are you that Carter made it to 100? Very surprised. To live for months in hospice care? Very surprised. Freeman says, did you get to the barn yet? The new Emmett Till book? I did. It's right here. It's right on the Foot Locker. It's fantastic. I want to write it up. I don't know if I will, but I want to. Once you start writing about books for an audience, you realize that a lot of your thoughts you only finalize when you write about the book, and I want to write it up. I'm so behind on, it's only the 4th, but I'm so behind on October books that it doesn't feel right to reach back to the barn. But it was great. William Doy says, haven't read anything by George Eliot yet. Is there a good place to start, or should I jump into Middlemarch? You should jump into Middlemarch. Tolstoy 111, in another 8 months, June Lockhart will turn 100. Chris Bianchi says, the 48 Laws of Power seems to be back in the spotlight again and very popular. Is this classic dude bro? It is classic dude bro. Yes. Michael H., thank you for making yourself so available to your fans. I don't have any fans, please. I have friends and enemies. I don't know. Is Alex still here? Cosmic Gaze says, am I weird for getting annoyed by Library of America having 4-volume writing of John Adams, but only 1 for Washington and Jefferson? Yeah, you kind of are. They were slave owners. Okay. Sid says, sounds like The Ancient Shore is good. It did sound fascinating. It's good, but boy, oh boy, talk about not ceding anything to readers. Oh man, I don't know. I honestly don't. Who's the publisher on this thing? Oh, the Belknap Press of Harvard University Press. Okay, so they've got a $14 billion endowment, so they don't have to worry about catching on with the public. But good Lord, I don't know who would read this book. I honestly don't. M. Kundera says, Steve, I'd like to hear more of your thoughts about Saul Bellow. I understand you're underwhelmed by his work. Yeah, I don't generally like it at all. And Street Medic says, why do historians call it the Battle of the Bunker Hill when most of it was fought on Breed's Hill? Because they're losers. Peyton says, are the ladies of the View top of the list for Trump? No. And Leo Picard says, do you like the books of Don Carpenter, or is he a mega dude bro? He's a mega dude bro. And there we go. We've reached the end of the questions because I have to go. We've passed 10 past the hour a couple of times. But this was wonderful. This was so much fun. I love talking with you all. I do. I love talking with you all like this. This is just so wonderful. So let's do it again tomorrow night. Before we enter into the wasteland of chaos and broken ground. So let's do it again tomorrow night if I can. So I'm gonna wrap this up for now. And come back. We'll come back next time. Thank you all very much for being here. This was wonderful. And you've of course got videos to watch. But I'll see you all soon. I hope tomorrow. So anyway, have a good night, everybody. Thank you, Booktube. Oh my baby.